I start off.
Yeah, you start.
Well, I played in the school pipe band at Broughton, and we, in our 6th year, we decided to form a jazz band, some of the guys that also played instruments. And we did our first gig on the boiler house roof in the school for the rest of the kids, and haven't looked back since.
And why did you decide to move? Did you play the pipes or the drums in the pipe
I
band?
played the drums.
So why move to jazz? What got you into it?
We were interested in jazz at the school, and there was a couple of guys in the school band that were interested in, like myself. And when I heard some records, I thought, just fantastic, you know. I heard some Sidney Bechet, Jelly Roll Morton, and of course I knew about Sandy Brown. I'd heard, and in actual fact he had passed the school gymnasium where we were playing records, and he came in to see what this noise was, you know. I think it was a Sid Phillips record we were playing, and you know, we couldn't believe this. The great man himself had appeared. And subsequently I found out that Alex Welsh had not long left Broughton School as well. And he was quite famous in Edinburgh.
So was there something about the school then?
No, not particularly. It was pure chance. The other guys that were in the band were Graham Robertson, who subsequently played in London and came back to Edinburgh and made quite a name for himself as a trombonist and bass player here. But our lives didn't mix again until much later. And there was Carl Ekval. He subsequently played in Edinburgh with various bands. We actually moved down south to London when I qualified as a pharmacist, and I was sent to London, and I knew some bands by that time, and used to follow them about and listen to the music. And it's a different sort of scene, you know, and they appeared to me to be more proficient than we were. However, Violet, over to you.
I got into it because somebody lent me a jazz record. It was I Want a Girl, played by the Saints, which is a Manchester band, and I just thought it was wonderful. And after that, somebody else mentioned that Freddie Randall's band was coming, because I was in Glasgow at the time, and they were coming to, I think it was the St Andrews Hall. So we went there, and after that I got involved in what was called the Glasgow Rhythm Club, and that's where the Clyde Valley Stompers played every Sunday night, and there was a lot of jivers went there as well. So it was a whole scene all up and coming at that time on both sides of the country, really.
And how did the pair of you meet?
Well, as far as I can remember, I think we came through in a bus trip. There was 2 or 3 things on in Edinburgh at the time. I think Sandy Brown was getting ready to leave. There was a farewell concert. We came to that. And then we found out there was a club called the Stud Club, and that's where Kenny's band was playing. So we went there and we met them there. And that would be 1958. 58.
I can't remember when Sandy left, but that's where we met. I don't remember meeting you there at that farewell party.
No, we didn't meet at Sandy Brown thing. We didn't meet till I went to Stud Club with Sheila and various other people from Glasgow.
Uh-huh. That was in Jim Young's cellar.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. The party that we went to was at the Crown Bar, which is now demolished. And that's where we met Mike Hart, and I had met Jim Petrie and Jack Weddell before that at one of the Sandy Brown sessions. He used to play every Sunday at the West End Cafe in Edinburgh. Packed out and no alcohol. It was cups of tea. I think it was £1 for a cup of tea. I don't know if you know what a shilling is.
5 pence now. Was it 10 pence? 10 pence.
And was there a difference between the Glasgow scene and the Edinburgh scene then?
I think the Edinburgh scene was more into New Orleans stuff, and the Glasgow stuff was more into Chris Barber. And
well, there was a few bands in each town, I would say, which had particular interest. The George Lewis band eventually ended up coming here when they lifted the ban on American musicians touring, and everybody that was interested in jazz here went to see them. St Andrews Hall was full, and that band stimulated a lot of potential musicians into doing what they now do. It was just had such an impact on everybody, and the whole scene kind of developed from there, and that was the New Orleans style that Kenny's talking about. So there was a couple of bands in Glasgow. The Vintage was one, and I think the Vernon was the other.
I think so.
And in Edinburgh there was the Climax Jazz Band, and who else?
I think that was it.
That was it at that time.
Aye. But we
the rest of the bands were playing earlier stuff.
Yeah.
The Mortons and the Louis Armstrong stuff.
The Lewis band had a concert in Manchester, and the next gig was in Glasgow, but there was no direct flights. So they came to Edinburgh for some reason and stayed overnight in the Carlton, and they were at a loose end. And Jim Young, our bass player, said, I'm going to sort something out. So we had a party at his cellar, which was a jazz club actually, and we actually played with all these guys, our heroes, you know. Incredible.
So Violet, take me back and talk me through a little bit more about how you went from buying the one record to actually performing. What was your route?
Well, I didn't perform for quite a long time. I sang in Glasgow. I sang with, it was a guy called Farry Forsyth, who's a very good drummer. He was from Edinburgh originally, I think. Yeah.
Played with Sandy Brown.
Yeah, and he heard me singing at a party, I think, and said, would you like to sing? So I sang with the Vintage, and it was Jake Simpson who was in the lead. He played the cornet for the Vintage. So I sang with them in Glasgow, and we did a couple of tennis clubs, that sort of thing. And then after that, when I came through to Edinburgh, because I met up with Kenny here, and from that, I think it was in Edinburgh for a year, and then he had to move south because of the job, so I did the same. We both went to London at the same time. And I wasn't playing the piano at that time, I had just been singing. And I sang with a band in London called the Kid Martin Ragtime Band for about a year or so. And I didn't get into playing until after I had my 2 children. And I thought I would like to do something, so I went back to piano lessons at that time.
But your mother was a piano teacher.
Yeah, my mother was a piano teacher in Glasgow, but I didn't really learn properly. You never do if your mother's teaching you. So I wasn't able to read faster than I could memorise it. So that's how we went with it. It was also very difficult then if you wanted to learn to play traditional jazz. There wasn't anybody who was actually teaching it. Not like today, where you've got all styles of jazz being taught. At that time, you had to sort of wing it. You just had to listen to recordings and try and build on that from your basic piano lessons. So it wasn't till, I would say, 1970s I got into playing, right? About 74, I think it would be, around about then.
And at which point did you start playing together and form a band together?
That would be 1974, 75 in a place called Margaretting in Essex. They had a rehearsal every Tuesday evening, so we were invited along, so that's when I first started playing. And then we moved back to Scotland in 1977. I was out of playing for a couple of years because there were no vacancies in any of the bands up here. By 1979 is when we formed a band that we've still got now, called the Spirits of Rhythm. and we formed that as a backing band for a Freddie Coleman concert. So that's basically how it progressed.
And what was it like being a woman in jazz at that time?
Well, there weren't very many piano players, quite a number of singers. I never felt there was any sort of prejudice. It was more difficult, I would say, because most of the bands were made up of men, so you had to be able to adapt to what they wanted you to do in terms of playing, etc.
None of the gigs had pianos anyway, did they?
No, it was very difficult, because all
them.
the pubs were getting rid of pianos at that time. So eventually, to stay playing, I had to buy my own piano. So I bought a second-hand upright for a gig that we had down in called the Spider's Web at the foot of Morrison Street. And I can't remember the exact circumstances, but I remember getting a phone call one day and say, "Your piano's been pushed down the stairs, it's broken." And I had paid £150 for this piano, so I said, "Well, you'll have to get the money back from him." Eventually, I got the money back from the guy. He'd done it in he was quite drunk, I think, and he just pushed the piano. It was at the top of the stairs.
Could have killed somebody. Mm.
So after that, I had an electric eventually when they came out, and I got one of those, and that kept me playing.
Were you each doing different jobs, or at home with kids, or was gigging, was that your main source of income?
Well, I was at home with the kids for quite a long time. Nobody really went out to work then. Most of the women were at home. So you just did that during the day, and we managed to get babysitter at night to look after the kids if you were out. We weren't out that often then.
We had a local band, didn't we? A local band of beginners practising.
That's the Margaretting one you're talking about?
Aye,
Yes, that was Tuesday night.
Aye, we played in Great Wakering as well, though.
I can't remember that. Where in Great Wakering? No. You'll have to fill
down
in
at
that
the
bit.
Castle.
Where?
The Castle bar further down the road on the way down to...
I've blanked that. Don't remember that one.
It must have been bad.
No, I remember Pit C. I remember playing at Pit C.
Oh yeah, well that was
the band that
established
developed
band
out of Margaretting.
Yeah.
And that was called the Criterion, that band. We played with them for maybe a year.
Mm-hmm.
And when you came back to Scotland, was it to Edinburgh?
Uh-huh.
And what was the sort of scene like then?
Well, it was very busy.
Aye, it was.
There was a lot of work around, and it was the music that most people were going to hear when they went out. You know, to the pub. That's what was in a lot of the pubs, because they kept it going for quite a long time because it brought their customers in on weeknights in particular. And at one point, we were playing about 3 nights a week as a semi-pro band. It was pretty good, I would say.
And who else was in the band other than you two?
Well, the Spirits, we had a variety of people from the beginning. I think George Duncan was on clarinet. He's not with us any longer.
Fraser Gold.
Who?
Fraser Gold on
Fraser Gold
trumpet.
on the trumpet. He's
Jack
still around, but
Weddell.
he had to pack up playing because he got serious tinnitus. Bass players, we had a few with Robin Galloway and
Willie Mack.
Willie Mack. Anybody else? Well, by the time we got to the 80s, we had Fred Murray, because he was with us when we went to Switzerland. We did a couple of jazz festivals out there. And Roy Percy played with us as well. A lot of the musicians in town have played with Spirits because it's been around for such a long time. The first gig that we did was December the 2nd, 1979. So that was as a support band for Freddie Coleman at the concert that I mentioned earlier.
He's a New Orleans drummer, fabulous drummer, and we put a band in around him, didn't we?
Yes.
We had other musicians from Newcastle came up to Edinburgh, and we set this up at the George Hotel, and there was another gig in Dunfermline.
Yes, they had another gig in Dunfermline.
Nice.
Well, you tell the
I'm
joke
trying to
then.
think.
I'm trying to think. It was about the mayor of Dunfermline.
Well, he wasn't. Freddie Coleman was thanking the band and the punters for coming along at the end of the session, and special thanks to the province of Dunfermline. He meant the province, the provost. He called them the province of Dunfermline.
So there you go.
And how did you sort of get your gigs? Was it all very informal? How did you build your networks?
Yeah, we didn't have networks as such, did we?
No, there was the...
If somebody heard the band, they liked it, they would say, can you play at this party, or can you do a gig for us, or a fundraiser, or things like that, you know. We eventually got into corporate stuff.
1980s, the corporate stuff came in then, because lots of people had a lot of money to spend on entertainment, so you got more work then. Before that, it was mostly pub gigs and tennis clubs, bowling clubs, their annual dinner, that sort of thing. Did that quite a lot.
And how have you seen the scene in Edinburgh change then over the decades?
Well, I think jazz was thriving right up until, maybe 1990s, I would say. And I think that's because it's a kind of generational thing, music. Each generation likes different types of music, and by that time, all the pub landlords had all changed. They were all younger, and they wanted different stuff in the pubs. So we had to think what we were going to do, and so that round about 2000, Norrie and myself got together and we started a jazz club, which is still going. And most of the bands that were playing at that time, there were 4 or 5, maybe 6 bands left, all got work at the jazz club on a regular basis. That kept them going for quite a long time.
And what's it like, or does it make a difference at all to be married and play in a band together?
Well, it's okay if you like the same type of music.
Which we do, basically, although...
Well, we've been really jazz aficionados all our lives, so, you know, you make the efforts to do what you have to do to make sure the band's going well and you're getting on with the work. It doesn't really... there are some differences of opinion about what you should be doing about this particular situation. So you just talk it through and decide what you're going to do after that. But mostly, I've been in charge of the Spirits of Rhythm. That's my designated role. And he's the drummer. And he's been in charge of the Criterion Marching Band, which has played for the Jazz Festival quite a number of times. And my daughter and her friend did their Grand Marshal at the front of that and learned dance routines, etc. So in that sense, we have 2 distinct areas that were designated to roll over.
We've got a son who's a great trumpet player. I
Yes.
took him to lessons when we lived in Southend-on-Sea.
Yes, he was awarded the best young trumpet
Oh,
player
that's
in the
right. He
Jazz
won the
Festival.
Alex Welsh Trophy
Alex
one
Welsh
year.
Trophy he won.
We've still never seen it.
It's disappeared into the ether somewhere.
So do you see, and can you nurture young talent coming up?
Well, we never turn anyone away, do we? We don't really nurture as such. If they're interested, they'll come and approach
And
you.
they'll speak to you and ask for a sit-in, or can you give them any advice? And we always try and help, because we really need...
But we don't actively.
Yeah, we really
do
need
anything.
a young generation of musicians to come up. And it's beginning to happen now because of the internet. Band that's well known on the internet is Tuba Skinny, who is a young band, and they've learned a lot of the early arrangements, the Mortons and Olivers and the Louis Armstrong stuff, early Louis Armstrong stuff. And a lot of the youngsters have seen that because it's on the internet. So they're now wanting to get back into playing the old style music. So it's on a bit of a revival.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
So looking back, what are your strongest memories? What sticks in your mind? What
Well,
moment?
the Jazz Festival was just a wonderful event. It just, they were lucky that they got the support to do that, financial support. They found a brewery who was prepared to put up a lot of money, and they put up the lorries for the floats for the carnival. And I mean, that's all on video, and we've got a copy of that somewhere. But it just did a lot for the jazz scene in Edinburgh, because there was thousands used to come out on Princess Street just to watch all these bands going past. So that's what I would say really, took it up the way, yeah. So you've got my heart to thank for that.
Kenny, what stands out for you in terms of?
Oh, just meeting all the musicians that were your heroes, you know. That was great. And touring about over Europe and all around, really. And it's just a great life. Not a professional life, because I was a pharmacist, you know, but...
Yeah, there was a lot of people who were fully employed, but they did this in their spare time, and a lot of them are still around. So I think it's a wonderful type of music to get into, because you never know what's going to happen next, where you're going, where it's coming. There's been all these festivals all over the world now.
Yeah, we've got lots of friends all over the world that think the same way as we do, you know. Most of them are musicians, but others as well, you know.
Most of the time it's great fun. You do have some disasters, but most of the time it's great fun, particularly if the music takes off and you're enjoying it.
Name a disaster.
Well, the first disaster, I think, was the first year of the Edinburgh Jazz Festival, because you had about 8 bands and they were looking for venues, and as I said, the publicans had got rid of a lot of the pianos, so they had to hunt around and find 8 pianos to put in, and some of the pianos had keys missing and the ivory off the top.
They all needed tunes.
It just went from one pub to the next, and what's wrong with this one? So, you know, when you look back, it's really funny. But that was a start, and it really took off then. You know?
And what are your memorable? You mentioned getting to play with lots of excellent musicians. Who are the ones that really stand out? What were the big highlights?
Well, I think probably when I moved to London, I played with the Kid Martin Ragtime Band, and they were great. They were all semi-pro, but fabulous musicians. I think, didn't they? Eventually,
yeah. Most of them did. They all run their own
when they
band.
Retired, I think.
Yeah. And for me, it's some of the guests that we had when we were in the jazz festival. We had a musician from New Orleans called Teddy Riley on a trumpet, and he was a knockout musician. We guested Sammy Lee. He was we recorded with him. That was the first recording that we made, and that's what got us to Ascona Jazz Festival, because we sent it off. The guy liked it. So all the Edinburgh musicians went over there, and eventually the parade band went as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we did it 2 or 3 times.
Edinburgh Parade Band. I mean, they're all on film as well. So it's a lot of it's documented in film. But the ins and outs, you know, you have to ask the musicians for all the sort of hiccups that happen along the way.
But it must be a passion, particularly given your family then, your
yes,
house.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it is. Yeah. But they wouldn't be involved in it if they didn't enjoy it. You know, they really get a lot out of it, you know. And it's a great outlet if you're doing an ordinary job during the day, because you know, some people are not really suited to a lot of the work they're doing. But if you've got music, doesn't matter whether it's jazz or not, it allows you to express yourself freely when you're not having to work. And you know, it's wonderful from that point of view, particularly when you see you're playing to a room full of dancers. It's absolutely great, because the band gets energy from the dancers and vice versa. So if it's a good gel between what the dancers want and what the band's playing, then it's great. Can't beat it.
We've got musical grandkids as well.
Yeah, we have.
Yeah.
James, our eldest, he's played guitar, piano, and drums. And the youngest, Raf, he's a very, very good piano player, jazz piano player now.
And drums.
And he plays drums in the parade band. Played in the parade band. So we're trying to make sure the music continues through the generations.